From the Bitcoin and Archive, here's a replay from the broader Bitcoin and Stack. Sometimes that means a past episode, sometimes an interview, and sometimes a guest appearance from another show. The headlines may have moved on, but the Bitcoin signal, market context, and practical lessons still hold up. If it's useful, it belongs back in the feed. Here's today's selection from the Bitcoin and Archive.
Hello everybody, my name is Daniel Prince and I'm the host of the Once Bitten podcast. This is a podcast focused on Bitcoin. It's my mission to interview as many people as I can around the different aspects of Bitcoin and help people understand exactly what Bitcoin could mean for them and for their families and for their future. I hope you enjoy the show. Thank you so much for listening. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Once Bitten podcast. Rejoining me today is David Bennett. Yes, NunyaBidness is back, and for very good reason. I love listening to Dave's show. He does a brilliant job. He reads all the news you can use. He gives you all of the updates. It's almost daily. He's an absolute trooper, a total legend of a Bitcoiner in the space. Has over 1,000 episodes now. Get over and follow Bitcoin and make sure you're tuning in to Dave and supporting him. You can do that by listening to his podcast on Fountain app. The same with this podcast, the same with all of your favorite Bitcoin podcasts. Go listen on Fountain app, not just to support your Bitcoin podcaster, but to support the guys, Nick and Oscar, who have done so much hard work over the last 3 years getting Fountain app off the floor and really being the revolutionary guys behind this value for value. Yes, of course, Adam Curry was the one pushing it in the first place, but these guys really picked it up and ran with it for Bitcoiners. And I love what they've done, and I've been using Fountain app, goodness knows, years since they launched. And I've ridden the wave through the bugs and the updates and the downs and the lows, but now it's so solid. It's so solid. It's really worth you getting over there. Please go and support them. That isn't enough an unofficial shield for Dave, for the Bitcoin and podcast, and for Fountain app. If you find another value for value platform to go and listen on, please do that too. Wav Lake is out there doing great work. I wanted to bring him on because I listened to one of his episodes, and it was called "The Forest is My Mentor," and it's about a talk that Dave gave at a Toastmasters meetup, and he wanted to delve into it a little bit deeper, and he did it on the podcast, and it was incredible. He got a huge amount of support from the Bitcoiners over on Fountain app, lots of boosts, lots of messages, lots of requests for more. So I figured, well, let's bring him on and go into this. And this is the first time Lauren has hung around for a whole episode. And this was 2 hours. And this is biology. Obviously it's linked to Bitcoin, everything is, but he inspired Lauren to stick around and listen, and she's going on now and doing her own research and pushing forward with digging deeper, excuse the pun, into what is out there on the forest floor and around us. And she's really taken this on as a learning experience. Anyway, before we get into the interview, show sponsors, Relay across Europe. Are you stacking sats? relai.ch/bitten. Download the app, be stacking up to 1,000 Swiss or equivalent per day. Very easy to do. If you want to take your business onto a Bitcoin standard, they have Relay private for you and for high net worth individuals, and for you if you're trying to plan your inheritance or your retirement, get over there. Relay, relai.ch/bitten. Over the pond, across in the US, you have Swan that offer all of these same services. swanbitcoin.com/bitten. Download the app, start stacking today. Please take self-custody of your Bitcoin. Do not leave it on an exchange. It is very likely to be hacked and you will lose all of your Bitcoin and all of the fiat that you exchanged in the first place. So it's a lose-lose situation for you. Bitbox02. Get over there. Bitbox.swiss/Bitten. Use the code Bitten at checkout. Get 5% discount on the hardware wallet that has been around for many years. Has loads of great features. Too many to list here. Get over to their website. Check their blog out because they've got an educational series as well as video tutorials to help you on your self-custody route. Paywithflash.com. Who are these guys? New kids on the block. What are they trying to solve? Bitcoin as a medium of exchange. That's what they're trying to solve. That's what they are. They have the laser eye focus on making it as easy as possible for merchants to start accepting Bitcoin. So get over to paywithflash.com to learn more. Keep a very close eye as more and more information starts rolling out from Pierre and the team over there. It's Pierre Corbin, who's one of the co-founders with his partner in crime over there, Hugo. So yes, please go check him out. Paywithflash.com. Join Orange Pill app if you haven't already. Come find us. I just had an incredible meetup over in Kuala Lumpur. Sending love to our brothers and sisters over in Malaysia. Thank you for hosting us. It was awesome to meet you. Now sit back and enjoy this one with Dave as he talks about the forest being his mentor. All right, Dave, we're back. We are back. Good to have you back on the show. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you doing, Daniel?
Very well, mate. Very well. And I wanted to get you back on the show because we didn't get a chance to go down the rabbit hole before. And you've been talking a lot about, actually, I'm going to let Lauren, did you meet before? I can't remember.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Hi, Lauren. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm fine.
Okay, Lauren, go for it. Do your best.
Gosh, what is Biscula Mycorrhizal? I tried my best.
Hang on. Let's let it's
Arbuscula. Arbuscula.
Mycorrhizal fungi.
Mycorrhizal fungi. Exactly. Right. So
okay.
You get to learn here. So
Yeah.
So
It's arbuscular is a type of fungus that grows in the soil that associates itself with plant roots, and plants can't live without it. Or there's different kinds of mycorrhizal fungi. Arbuscular is one of them. It's actually one of my favorite ones, but it's the way that it associates with plant roots is different than the way that other mycorrhizal fungi associate with plant roots. It does different functions. So I think what we may want to start with is, why do plants even associate with this stuff in the first place? Because that's sort of like what we're just now discovering about soil microbiology and the life that's in the soil, that we hadn't really known this before. It's kind of we're kind of discovering something crucial about how plants and the soil interact with each other, and the way that they interact with each other is mediated by all these creatures and organisms that live in the soil itself. So one of the things about plants associating with something like a fungus is that it's critical for the plant to associate with these kinds of fungi, because without it, it can't get things like phosphorus. And we're always looking at these plant roots going, oh, well, the plant roots go out in the soil and they're able to get the water, and they're able to soak up calcium, and they're able to soak up nitrogen, and almost none of that is actually fundamentally true. I mean, they can in a little bit of a way, but without that association with these fungi in the soil, there is no plant life. We would be living on a barren planet without fungus. And that goes back hundreds of millions of years. It's a wild association that started somewhere between 700 and 500 million years ago. well before the dinosaurs, well before, most of us, any of the creatures on this planet ever came to be. So, um, yeah, it's I'm sorry, I'm fumbling a little bit because the structure of what it is that we're talking about is so huge that it's kind of one of those things that we might want to break that one down a little bit. Um, I would the way that I would go about this is to go back the 500 million years. And we had a couple of things on the planet. One was the very start of what would become fungus. The other was the very start of what would become what we know as plants, except that both of them kind of stitched together to form plants. So you had algae, which was a bunch of cells that had chloroplast in them that they would photosynthesize just like plants do, just like all the green plants outside. They get struck by sunlight. They take in water, they take in CO2 out of the atmosphere, and they create sugars. And those sugars do all kinds of stuff. But the algae, the blue-green algae at the time, just like were little single cells floating around in pools of water or in like, I don't know, on rocks and little holes where little tiny, where enough water would gather, and then this algae would grow. And it was great for the algae, but they really weren't able to do anything other than that. And then they meet up with fungus, and the fungus starts stitching these bacteria at the time. They start kind of stitching them together, is about the best way to put it, so that now the cells sort of have a scaffold to stick onto. And the reason that the fungus was looking for these, or that found this association, was that the fungus cannot make food. It they have to get food from somewhere else. It so happens that they meet up, or they hook up with these blue-green algae, and these blue-green algae are able to make sugar. It's a great energy source. It's a great food source for something like fungus. So what happens is that the fungus actually associates way back in the day with this fungus, and it says, or these cells in this fungus kind of hook up, and the fungus says, I'm going to give you something that you can't get on your own, and you're going to give me sugar for it. And that's where the association began. Now, that association, if you kind of think about, if you were to think about like the fungus as a net, and then you sticking like cells onto that net, if you back up a little bit, you start thinking that you may be constructing a leaf. And even today, every plant you see is shot through with a fungus. Whichever one it is depends on what the species of the plant is and the species of the fungus. But when you look at a plant, you're not looking at like a tree or a bush. You're looking at 500 million years of construction history between these two organisms sharing a common bond. And that common bond is, you give me sugar, or you pay me in sugar for these nutrients that I'm able to mine out of the soil that you can't. You can do something I can't. I can do something you can't. We hook up and we roll. And that's sort of where this whole story begins. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, it does.
I've been trying to pull up some pictures of the fungus as we're talking. It's like, so this all stems. You did an episode called "The Forest Is My Mentor," which got a lot of good feedback. I remember you doing the show, and then the show afterwards, you read through all of the boosts and whatever else. So you can see that, Lauren, like all these tiny little strands that the single cell, right? From what I understand, single cell tubes, and what they do, to use the analogy which you used in your pod, it's like, imagine all the trees together and their roots go underground, and then these single cell fungi, this web, it's like the wood wide web, not the world wide web, right? They're all sending messages to each other and exchanging information right under our feet. That's crazy. So and they have a marketplace, and they have mining operations, and they have
Yes.
freedom of exchange. They're communicating value to each other.
Uh-huh.
It's mad when you think about and the timeline you're talking about as well. It's just so fascinating.
Well, see, and that's where now we can start getting back into this. You had asked Lauren about arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi. It's actually one of my favorite ones because I've told you that all these plants, and we're talking like all trees, all bushes, all grasses, it's like I think it's 98.5% of plant life on on the planet they have to have this association. Otherwise, they don't exist. So the only ones that really don't associate are things like brassicas, like mustard plants, cabbages, canola, and all the brassicas pretty much don't really do associations, but honestly, that's about it. Everything else needs it. And when we talk about how these fungi not just associate with the roots, they penetrate into the roots and they will literally start building a fiber between the cells until they somehow or another sense that a cell may be receptive to causing a structure to form inside of it. So what's neat about this is that the fiber, if you look at micrographs or pictures of microscopic pictures of the association with the plant and this fungus, it looks like the fungus actually goes inside the cell. It looks like it punched a hole through it and is actually inside the cell, but that's not really what's going on. The end of this mycorrhizal fiber, for lack of a better term, somehow or another senses a chemical signal from the cell, and the cell itself senses a chemical signal emanating from the mycorrhizal fungi. It causes a change in the cell. And what happens is that the cell wall starts to push in. And then that fungus builds a structure like inside. Like this. Let's see if I do it this way. Like here's the cell wall, and then here's like the fiber that's coming into it. There's communication going on, and then all of a sudden the cell starts to do this, and then the fungus ends up coming in here, but it never quite touches. There's a space. In that space is where the transfer of the minerals that the fungus mines in the soil is exchanged for the sugar. And when I look at it, when I look at all the different kinds of interactions that are going on, it's like a farmer's market. There's you can go to farmer's market and there's a guy selling vegetables, and there's another person selling bread, and there's another person selling pork, and there's another guy selling fish, and some woman selling cows, and they're all different, but they're all at the same market. And this is the exact same thing here, is that in this structure, there's like I could actually just use my rings. One ring is different than the other ring. It has a completely different chemistry association with the plant cell than this one does. So like one of my rings would be emanating phosphorus. The plant cell would pick that up and say, I've got to make an exchange. The only way I can get that phosphorus is to give a certain amount of this particular kind of sugar. If that exchange isn't made, then the plant doesn't get the phosphorus, which it needs, and the fungus doesn't get the sugar, which it needs. So there's a complete chemical mechanism that's been constructed over 500 million years where they're easily able to exchange value for value. In this case, the plant uses sugar as money. That's all it's doing. We can look at it from, oh, it's so nice, the plant's giving sugar so it gets phosphorus. No, it's paying in a currency that is based on carbon. And that's what's really going on here. When you start thinking about, like, if we think about Bitcoin and its energy backed money, in a way, it's the same thing. The tree or the plant performed a certain amount of chemical work to build the sugar. That sugar is stored. So the sugar actually represents the time the tree spent in manufacturing the sugar. Now it can take that sugar and it can pay for things. And on the other end of the spectrum, we've got the fungus, who the only way that it can get the minerals out of the soil that the plant needs is that it happens to be able to produce organic acid. And it's the acid that gets into the soil that starts degrading the rock, that starts pulling phosphorus and magnesium and calcium and what, there's a whole host of them. They're like 27 different micronutrients that a plant needs. And all of them are different, and all of them have to be scavenged through the action of a particular kind of organic acid that is different than the other kind of organic acid to get the other that, like phosphorus is broken down or able to be scavenged from the soil by one kind of organic acid, which is chemically significantly different than the one that gets magnesium. So these are the currencies of the fungus, because it takes a lot of energy to build those organic acids. And it would all be for naught if there wasn't a relationship between the plant and the fungus, because the energy that is required for the fungus to build the organic acids, the only way that energy is present is through the sugars that it gets from the plant. So it's this 100% free market assembly that is based on currency, that is based on carbon, that is a representation of energy used to do the various things that they're trading with each other for. And it's almost as if they had free market society 450 million years before humans hit the planet, and we're just copying it. Or because we've never really known how this worked, and yet somehow we developed a free market, like in essence markets and or free markets, all by our lonesome. Then maybe what's really happening is that there's some fundamental law of the universe that's driving all living things to act in the same way. You have to be able to show value to be able to get something that is also of value, that's something different.
I got one question. What does it mean when like a tree is dead? Is that because the fungus stopped like giving it the nutrients, or
It could, but most likely it's just dead from either old age or it got a disease of one kind or another. Because the fascinating part of this is, so one of the other fascinating parts of this association is, like what your dad was saying, that it's not just one plant that is associated with these fungi. These, like, the same fungi can reach out and associate with 100 different plants. So therefore, all these plants are, and they don't even have to be the same kind of plant. One could be a pine tree, another one could be a birch tree, another one could be a grass plant, another one could be a legume. They're all different, but they're all connected to the very same physical network of this one particular fungus that's in the soil. And more than that, different kinds of fungus can also associate with the same plant. So in essence, they're connected to all these other different mycorrhizal fungi. And all the plants are connected to each other through this network, through multiple parallel different networks. So not only does sugar freely flow between all of these things, and the fungus is taking the sugar and doing its mining business to get the nutrients back to the plant, it's also transporting water. And sometimes a situation occurs where a tree that gets sorely damaged in a forest, like, let's say, hit by lightning and knocked over, yet some of the roots are still in the ground and they're still alive. but there's no actual tree that with leaves that can photosynthesize. It's been discovered that a lot of these things are actually still living for decades because water, sugar, and nutrients are being shuttled from one tree to the almost dead tree to try to keep it alive long enough for it to maybe send out another shoot, start growing another branch, put out some leaves, be able to take care of itself. But in the meantime, the fungus is actually acting as a shuttle of all the stuff that the tree uses from one tree to another. So the water that's stored in one tree is being used by a tree that's almost dead to keep it alive so that it can grow up and do or grow back and be healthy. But moreover, like let's say that a disease attacks one of these trees, that tree may very well die because of the disease, but in the interim, it's highly likely that it's going to produce some types of chemistries that are called signaling chemistries that flow back through the mycorrhizal fungi to the other trees, and the other trees go, oh crap, we're about to get hit by this particular disease. It's not that they actually think about it. This is all chemistry and biochemistry, but the presence of that particular chemical that's come over the network is telling the living trees, here's how you're going to prepare for that attack. And then all of a sudden, their immune system is already primed to be able to fight that off. And we know that that actually occurs. So when a tree dies, it could simply just be old age. It could simply be disease. But if it is disease, it still performs the last function of screaming to its neighbors that there's something dangerous is afoot and you need to prepare.
Crazy, huh?
Yeah, I knew about the roots, like the trees could like communicate with each other somehow, but I did not know that. That is very interesting.
And what's even like more interesting there to carry on when it's in the interest of the fungi to transmit that message, right? Because if it doesn't transmit the message from the diseased tree, then the rest of the trees are going to get wiped out, and the fungi is going to get wiped out because the fungi is completely dependent on the trees making the sugar. See, it's just so intricate and crazily interesting.
Yeah, it gets even weirder as you get as I fell down that rabbit hole. It gets really strange because, Dan, you were saying that these fungi, the tendrils or the threads that you're looking at in the picture, it is the case that they're one cell thick, but they're tubes, and then like that tube will divide and then grow that way, but they'll be so like it looks like it's one tube, but they're actually like one cell connected to this cell and then that one, and so they're like segments. So it's not just like you see that one thread, it's not just one cell, it's millions of cells, but they're all connected in a single tube. And what's interesting is that stuff actually flows down that tube like bacteria. There's organisms that live within like as fungi lives within plants, other organisms live within fungus.
It's like the
And
metro system for bacteria.
yeah, it's in fact, it's some experiments have been done where it's faster for chemical signals to flow through the fungus between trees, like the attack chemistries saying we're all in danger, we're all going to die. But it's also faster for bacteria to be able to extend their hunting activities farther away than actually them trying to go through the soil, which is there's a lot of obstacles. But the fungus actually bores right through that like a tunnel. And so therefore it's now like a super highway for microorganisms to be able to travel to all parts of all parts of this forest. And it's also been noticed that some particular microorganisms that are inside these fungi are actually hunting down other microorganisms to kill and eat inside these fungi. So it's like this, it's a fungi is a play within a tree or a plant, and then there's a whole other play going on inside the fungus, and we have almost no idea if the play that's going the life that's inside the fungus, that is not the fungus itself, does it have anything to do with the health of the trees and the forest or the grass and the prairies? We don't know. We know they're there, but we don't know if there's any activity that they're also performing that might suggest that this is part of the forest ecosystem. So we got a lot to learn, and it amazingly it just gets even more bizarre when you think of there's an instance where there's a forest that's been studied a couple of times. I think it's in Germany, and it's got fir trees and birch trees. And both of these trees are connected by fungus. In the winter, the birch tree doesn't have any leaves. This is one of my favorite ones. The birch trees shed all its leaves because it's deciduous. So it drops its leaves in fall, and it has no ability to photosynthesize. Can't make sugar for itself, can't make sugar for anybody else. So the fir tree, which is an evergreen, is able to photosynthesize all year long. So when using various experimental techniques, it's been found that during the winter, sugar is flowing from the fir tree to the birch trees in winter through the mycorrhizal fungi. It keeps the birches alive. In summer, this is what I love about this. In summertime, the birch trees, when they leaf out, they shade out the fir trees. So the fir trees, their photosynthetic activity goes through the floor. They got they're able to produce some sugar, but not like what they really need. But the birch trees are producing all kinds of sugar, and they're taking up all the sunlight. And almost as if an apology, the birch trees reverse the flow of sugar, and the mycorrhizal fungi now takes the sugar from the birch tree and takes it to the fir tree. So depending on what part of the year you're in determines which way the sugar is flowing in the mycorrhizal fungi underneath the ground. And when I look at that, it makes a lot of sense. This is because they're keeping each other alive through the worst parts of their year.
Good neighbors. So
Yeah.
the question here is, why would the fungi? So in winter, the birch tree has dropped all of its leaves, and now the conifers or whatever, the fir trees, the pines, are shoving that sugar. Why wouldn't the fungi just take all the sugar? Why do you think, Lauren? Why would it? Why is it only taking a little bit of commission and then giving it to the birch tree?
Because it needs as much trees as it wants, I guess. Like it wants as many trees as it can get.
Well, it could live all year round off of the conifers and the pines, right? Because they're evergreen.
Mm-hmm.
Any theories, Dave?
Yeah, I think it's an issue where Lauren's absolutely correct in that estimation. The fungi, it's in the fungus's best interest to have as many living trees around as possible. Because if you look at the way a network, whether it's a computer network or a phone network or whatever kind of network you want to talk about, each individual represents a node in that network. We talk about that in Bitcoin all the time. I run 2 full nodes. So I'm like, each one of these nodes is receiving and transmitting gossip and messages and transactions and making sure that all the consensus data or all the consensus rules are followed. But each one is a node connected on this network. And likewise, these trees and each plant, whether it's a tree, a bush, shrubbery, whatever, the grass, they're all nodes on the network. And if I've got one tree and let's say I've got one fir tree and it's surrounded, this entire perimeter is surrounded by birch trees. And in the winter, the fungus that's connected to both the birch and the fir tree that's in the center, if that fungus in the winter time decides to just say, you know what, I want all the sugar for myself, to the detriment of all the trees that all the birch trees that are in the perimeter. And with it on the other side of those birch trees is a whole other set of fir trees. But you got to get through the birch trees first, right? So if you're traveling, you want to make sure that you have a place to stay before you go onto the other side of the perimeter. So if for whatever reason the fungus decides to starve out all the birch trees when the summer comes around and all those birch trees were to say, let's say they die, well, then the fungus is kind of in a pickle because there's not another tree that it can say, okay, I have a local source, even though that I'm one big fungus, there's still distance to consider. So those birch trees would provide a safe harbor as the organism tries to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And it can't do that without other nodes on the network propagating, helping it propagate itself, because almost all life on the face of the planet has one single drive, and that is to propagate itself. And whether it's by having children or growing bigger or however it works, the propagation of yourself is the number one instance. So it's in the fungus's best interest to take a commission off of the transport of these sugars and keep as many trees around it alive as humanly or as fungally possible. So I think that you hit the nail on the head. As to whether or not we know that for a fact, I have no idea. But that's my bet.
It's another great analogy to like the Lightning Network now, right? You take a little bit of commission for rerouting a payment, and the more nodes on the network, the better. Can you all start running nodes, listeners, please? Because this is how we win. There's so many analogies that are directly linked to Bitcoin, and big shout out to Brandon Quittem as well. He wrote an article on this many years ago. But Lauren, how many more questions do you have? You were asking earlier about if a tree was to die. Let's go through the process. Tree dies, falls over in the forest. What happens then?
Well, he already explained the other trees try and keep it alive.
They try and keep it alive, but let's just say it does die. Now it falls over. It's got nothing left to give. I mean, it's done. It's off the network.
Well, then it rots, I guess.
Yeah, it brings up another part of the interesting part of the history of fungus and when it was able to do certain things. Because a fungus is the only thing that can rip down the hemicellulose and lignin that's in the wood. Wood consists essentially of cellulose, hemicellulose, and lignin. All of it is built on sugar. It's just different configurations of glucose molecules that where they're connected, how they're connected, what their orientation to each other is. But it's like if you were to chew on wood long enough and you had enzymes in your mouth that were able to break apart the individual glucose molecules, eventually it would turn sweet because it's just sugar. So when you see a tree, when most people look at a tree and say that's a lot of wood, I look at it and say that's even more sugar. It's just a great big bag of sugar. I see piles of grass and I'm like, it's sugar. I look at like a wood, the wood that's built, that a house is built of, and I see sugar. I don't see this stuff anymore because it's like I'm just looking at the chemistry that's behind it. But when a tree falls in the forest and it contacts the soil, a completely different set of fungal organisms takes over, and none of them are mycorrhizal. Mycorrhizal fungi are a completely different class than like the oyster mushrooms that you eat in the grocery store. And I bring up oyster mushrooms because they're one of the most efficient fungus used in the forest to break down wood. And if you go up to a forest and you see a log that's been there for like 50 years, sometimes you can reach into it and it just crumbles like powder. And that's all because the fungus is just completely destroying the bonds between all these glucose molecules because it's feeding on it. That's the way it gets its sugar, is by producing the enzymes necessary to crack all these sugar molecules open. But there was a time when we had plants, trees, we had full fungal integration in all these trees, and not a single fungus on this planet was able to break down wood. So you had massive forests, and all the time, over millions and millions of years, you got trees that would just up and die for whatever reason. Either they got diseased, or they got hit by lightning and burned to the ground, or whatever it was. They fell over and died, and there was no fungus to break it down back into its constituent elements, eventually making that piece of wood disappear. So what happens in a forest when you've got trees that are like 100-foot tall that fall over and there's no way that they can actually go away? You end up with some people have conjectured that some of these forests had dead wood piled up into it like a half a kilometer thick, which to me means the end of that forest. Eventually, you're not going to be able to grow trees through that. But it's just, logs on logs on logs and crisscrossed and all over the place. And it's just a half a kilometer up. That's a long way. And that's where we get all of our coal. So eventually it got covered with dirt. And nothing was breaking it down. So the wood was still there, got covered with dirt. Other things happened. It ended up kind of sinking. All the oxygen finally got out of it. And all of a sudden it started heating up, and boom, after millions of years, you get a coal seam. So when we're burning coal, what we're really burning is old growth forests that were alive during the time that fungus wasn't able to break down wood. There will never be another time that we can make coal on this planet, because fungus will get into the wood, eat the wood before there's time enough to turn it into coal. So the coal that we have right now is all the coal that the earth is ever going to see, because fungus figured out how to break down wood.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Fungus evolved.
Yeah. Ugh.
It's super interesting. Any further questions? This is full-on biology lesson right now. I hope everyone's enjoying it.
Well, there is one more thing before I forget, which is if we go back to mycorrhizal fungi, those cells that make up the fibers that you see in those pictures, where they're connected, say these two things right here, like the end of the cells, they're connected like this. And if I rotate my hand, it's closed. But some of these things are actually fully open. So even though they're individual cells, like I said, they're tunnels through the soil for these things. But not only do bacteria and other things that live inside the fungus are able to use that as a transit system, the nucleus or the nuclei of the cells of the fungus themselves are also traveling. And that to me is really interesting, because each cell in your body's got a nucleus, right? And what's inside that nucleus? You remember? It's all your DNA.
Oh.
All your chromosomes that hold all the DNA that give the instructions of your body how to metabolize, how to grow, what color your hair is, what color your eyes are. All of the instructions about you physically being you, there's more to it than that. There's how you grew up and where you grew up, and that affects you. But essentially, you've got a gene for brown eyes. That gene is encoded in DNA, and all that DNA is in your nucleus. And here, in mammals and most plants, the cell contains the nucleus, and the nucleus never leaves the cell. But here, we've got nuclei running like faster than you can imagine, all up and down this network. And like when I look at this, I'm always going, well, why? Remember what I was telling you about, like these organic acids being constructed that some different ones mine phosphorus and some mine magnesium. Well, the ability to make those organic acids is driven by a metabolization procedure that is described in the DNA, and that's contained in the nucleus. So if I'm able to have like not only just one nucleus create all these organic acids at, say, the very tip where the fungus is actually still boring into the rocks, that's where I want my organic acids. Because that's how I'm dissolving rock. That's where I'm getting all my mining stuff in. But if I've only got one nucleus at the very end of that tip, well, I'm kind of constrained by how much of the enzymes that I need to build this metabolic structure that creates this organic acid. But if I can get 15 nuclei at a tip, well, then that's a different story. I can go 15 times as fast on my drilling. So when you look at some of these mycorrhizal fungi, you'll see the traveling nuclei, and it still amazes me because I'm like, well, if the nuclei isn't there in the cell to support the metabolism functions of that cell because it's somewhere else, then what happens to the cell that doesn't have the nucleus by it? That brings up a whole other set of problems. It's all weird. So yeah,
that's exactly like the mining process now, right? You have the exploration part. So you have like companies that will go out, they'll send people out, geologists, to go and find, is there a good place to drill for oil or this, that, or the other thing, natural gas. They're doing the same, like the fungi. They're sending out feelers. Oh, we just hit a great big rock. What's in this rock? Oh, we could probably mine phosphorus or magnesium from it. But now send us like 15 extra nuclei because like it's game on now. We need like, this is going to be command center. But meanwhile, there'll be more tendrils going out, and they might find some chalk, and this might find some limestone, and just even a tiny pebble, right? It's so yeah, it's crazy. I love it. It's awesome. So. And now people were like, we're 45 minutes in, there's no context to like your knowledge here, like oh yeah, I'm just a geek that reads up on this stuff, but what's your actual background in this field?
I have a degree in cell and molecular biology, and that came about simply because I kind of a geek about this stuff, but soil was never part of something that I was interested in until I started getting really interested in ranching and how, animals, and I don't have a ranch. I don't have cows, but somehow or another I got hooked up. Texas Slim?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Very well.
So me and him were palling around together in Texas when I was still living down there. And he was the first Bitcoiner in the flesh that I ever met.
Huh.
That I got to be friends with and hung around with. And the more we talked, I had been already developing an interest in taking care of the earth. And I was just starting to get into soil. And then I met up with Texas Slim, and it kind of accelerated the whole thing. And the more I started reading books like, actually I've got them. Where's my books? Like Practical Permaculture by Bloom, and let's see who else is in here. Agroforestry and Silvopasture by Barton. And then I've got several books on biochar, here's one, Quality Agriculture, from a guy named Kempf. And I mean, I started just ingesting podcast and soil books and pasture management books and rotational grazing books to the point where I just I just became enamored with how these systems are working. And then, as you start seeing people saying we've got to get rid of the cows. And by that time I had read so much that I'm like, you have no idea what you're suggesting. I have absolutely no idea. It's like, oh, but they're killing the atmosphere. I'm like, you have no idea what you're suggesting. And I'd get into it, but I don't, I know you probably have another question. It's just that
Oh no no
at
no
this
no no!
point,
Now you're on cows. Now you're on cows. Like you gotta. Explain.
okay, yes, Lauren, what's your relationship with the cow?
Um, I would say maybe a bit of an obsession with cows. I don't know. I find them really cute, and they taste good, so that's a bonus. Um,
Well, yeah,
Well,
you for 8 years, we were around cows the whole time,
mhm.
right? We were living in rural France, and we always had cows in the field next door. So she got to see the
right.
babies, and she got to see the whole
You
thing.
see
And
a
they are.
buff.
We saw a birth, and yeah, the yes, and they are delicious. But so yes, so it's your favorite animal.
Yeah.
Yeah. She even has her cow slippers on for those on YouTube right now. These are her favorite slippers.
Ah, ah.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, see, the thing about cows, the thing about cows, Lauren, is that they're a critical component to the bacteria as well as the mycorrhizal fungi in the soil. It's an interesting it's this is where I became 100% wishing that I had to do it all over again and I would just be a rancher. But I wouldn't be a conventional rancher, which makes it a little difficult. But the reason is this is that I don't see any difference between the soil and the cow. A lot of people they'll look at and go look at those cows on that pasture, and I'm like, all I see is pasture.
Mhm.
I don't see the cows anymore because of what I know the cow does. Remember how I was saying that 500 million years ago, somehow or another, fungus discovered algae and said, sugar, and then started stitching them together, and they literally created trees. The whole reason plants have structure is because of what fungus did 500 million years ago. Same thing with the cow and the soil. You can't separate them because the cow, it can't even digest grass. It eats grass, but it depends on the microbiology that it's in its rumen to be able to convert that grass into usable nutrients and sugars and whatnot like that. Because again, grass is nothing but sugar. It's mostly cellulose. But cellulose, as we already talked about, is just nothing but glucose molecules. It's just sugar. It's just in a different format. So the cow eats the sugar. The cow eats the grass. The grass grew up through the soil and it picked up as it punched out of the soil in the early spring. It was coated with fungus and bacteria that already lived in that soil. Not 100 miles away bacteria, the soil that's right there underneath that cow. So when the cow eats that grass, it's continuously ingesting brand new genetics of the exact same soil bacteria, mycorrhizal fungi, other kinds of fungi, nematodes, all manner of critters that are microscopic, but they live in the soil and they're critical to the soil. They get ingested by the cow. And it so happens that the cow, their body temperature is at the best temperature you could possibly have to grow these critters out, basically incubate them, propagate them, make more of them, a lot more of them, so that by the time all that stuff reaches the other end of the cow and it falls out as a cow plop, it's has reinvigorated the soil with a whole bunch more bacteria. If that were not to happen, you end up with a situation where if you're in the tropics, you get a dry season and a wet season. It's always warm, but that dry season will kill soil bacteria. So it's dependent on animals that are able to eat and poop, and between those two actions, incubate a whole bunch of soil bacteria that came from that area so that it gets laid back down. If that didn't happen during the dry seasons, you can kiss the soil bacteria goodbye. In the temperate zones, where we have freeze and where we have free, like winter and summer, same thing happens. The soil and the bacteria would eventually die because it would freeze to death if it wasn't for a continual replenishment of the soil bacteria by these animals. If that doesn't happen and your soil bacteria or your soil microbiology dies, you start getting massive amounts of erosion. Now go look at a farm field that hasn't had cows on it for a long time and tell me if you see evidence of erosion. You probably will, because there's not the life that's in the soil isn't there just to help trees communicate with each other. It's not there just to mine phosphorus out of rock. It stitches the soil together. It performs several functions at once. And that's one of the incredible things about how it is that we have been so blind to what the hell's going on underneath our feet that we never thought once that there could be a thing, a community that lives in this stuff that we dig in with our hands and go, ew, I got dirt on my hands. That without it, all of the topsoil in the world would be at the bottom of the ocean, and we wouldn't have any agriculture. What we're doing when we're putting animals back on the fields is now that I look at it, I see the cow eating the pasture going into the cow, more of the stuff that makes a pasture being produced inside the cow walking over somewhere else and then depositing it, and it cycles over and over and over and over and over again. The death of the soil that I see is always in regions where there are not any cows. The cow is absolutely critical to the pasture, to the point that I asked a rancher one time, in your opinion, where does the soil end and the cow begin? And he was one of the only people that thought the only people that I ever asked that thought the exact same way I do. The soil ends at the top of the cow's head, and the cow ends about 6 foot under the soil. To me, they're together. The cow is just this weird animal representation of the life that's in the soil. So now when I look at cows on fields, all I really see is soil and the mechanics of keeping that soil together.
So how many stomachs does a cow have?
Isn't it like 2?
4.
Oh, that's close enough.
So that's what. So they're like walking factories, right? So they eat the grass, which goes into one stomach, and that's going to take out what it needs from that, and then pass on into the next chamber, which is going to start growing all of the critters, as Dave called them. Then it will go on to the next chamber where they'll just get bigger. Then it go on to the next chamber where it gets compacted, ready for a cow pat, as they're commonly known in England. The pat comes out in a different part of the field with thousands and thousands more minerals and goodness and bacteria and fungi, everything that's gone through that little factory in the cow's belly. And the whole time it's just eating and eating and eating and moving and eating and moving and eating and shitting and blah, 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 right? Amazing.
Yeah.
So the same with sheep, Dave, or not?
Yeah, I was going to ask the same thing.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Because we're around sheep right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. All ruminants perform the same function.
Cool.
The cows, sheep. I mean, there's different.
You count goats?
Some are better than it at others, but then you get into like deer and other critters that don't necessarily, they're not as.
Well, when you compare the end product, a cow pat is way bigger than a sheep's poo, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you've got a much better.
But I was also saying pigs because they just eat all the roots and all that stuff.
Pigs
don't they?
aren't ruminants.
Oh,
No.
no.
Okay.
Oh,
Do you want to
They-
explain what ruminant is then? Then we got that definition.
Well, a ruminant is just think of it as like a multi-chambered stomach animal that
Oh, yes.
essentially it cannot actually digest what it is it eats the way that a pig, when it eats whatever a pig eats, it directly digests that mass and changes it chemically into something it can use. A cow or a ruminant has a multi-chambered stomach that contains another set of microorganisms that are genetically different from the cow that it depends on to be able to perform the same function of digestion, because the cow can only absorb sugar and nutrients. It can't actually digest anything on its own. Not really. Not its main food source, which is one of the reasons why we hit up our cows with antibiotics all the time in high doses when we have them on a feed lot and they're eating corn, which they were never designed to do in the first place.
And this is something I really want to smash, because I see a lot of the time people confusing these monocrops, and you mentioned canola earlier. So let's go down like the whole rapeseed. We call it rapeseed here.
Yeah,
you said
that's what it should be called.
Right. You might, we could talk about that too.
Well, we named it canola over here because it's marketing. It's rapeseed. Let's be honest.
Absolutely. Now, the field right across from us that we see, I don't know what they're going to plant there, but you've seen the state of it, right? That's what Dave's talking about. Like the topsoil's wrecked. It's wrecked, and they're gonna plant fence to fence. Most likely, I mean, around here, you're probably gonna look at. Well, I'd rather it be wheat than rapeseed, but let's see. My suspicion is it's going to be rapeseed, because that gets subsidized by the government to plant this shit. So right at the beginning, Dave said, do you remember he was talking about brassicas? He was talking about cabbage or broccoli and things like that don't use that. They
don't have mycorrhizal function, or they don't have mycorrhizal associations.
Right. Okay. So you got a whole field, thousands of acres of rapeseed, which is one of these plants, which does not have association with these fungi. You're going to completely wreck the soil, totally wreck the soil, because it won't be able to stick together, because that fungi is not going to be there performing that function. Then you're going to have someone coming along in a great big combine harvester, churning the shit up out of all of that. And what people believe is that this stuff is grown as cattle feed. And if we had less cows, then we wouldn't have to plant these monocrops, which is complete nonsense as well, because as Dave just said, the cow doesn't want to eat that shit.
No,
it doesn't want to. We're completely tricked into believing it's planted because of it needs to go and be cattle feed, so we can all feed you for paupers that don't understand farming or any of this shit, right? So even if the cow does eat that, it's going to harm it. It's going to be shot up with antibiotics and whatever else. It's going to have a shit life. It's not going to be out in the field. It's not going to be healthy. And it's not going to be good for us when we get to ingest it. So the whole thing is great just because they want to plant this stuff for basically, because it's cheap, it gets in all of the food products. But what I think is truly going on, it's getting into the fuel mix, because that's where the real money is for this stuff. It gets into what's called biofuel. And because we're now supposed to go net zero and Great Reset and Agenda 2030 and all of this BS, and now we're getting sustainable aviation fuel, which is getting all of this crop into it. And then you can follow the dots even further, like who's the biggest farmland owner in the US? Oh, it just happens to be Bill Gates. That guy's name freaking crops up everywhere. And what are they growing on it? It certainly ain't, they're not grazing cattle on it. No way.
Yeah, and that ends up being one of the major problems, is that there's a place in South Texas, which bordering Mexico, and it's pretty desolate out there. It's not a lot of rainfall, pretty brittle environment, very hot in the summertime. And it can get kind of cold in the wintertime too. It's basically more dry than anything. It gets even drier in the wintertime. So you're looking at this land and it's wrecked. It doesn't look good. But it's looked like that for decades and decades and decades and decades and decades. Nobody remembers what the hell it looked like before this. But there was two things that were done down there, and they were kind of side by side. One was people put cows on part of it, and did what's called rotational grazing, where they'd put the cows on one little spot and made sure that they got off in a day, 2 days maximum, and then move somewhere else. And they just rotated them around. Then the other one, they didn't have any cows on them at all. And that one was done by, I don't know, like some EPA funded study or something like that. And they kept cows off that thing for 60 years because they were just convinced that cows are terrible for land, that they do the worst damage. Which is all BS. It's complete crap, because when you go back and you look at the land that doesn't have cows on it, it's worse. When you go back and you see proper rotational grazing of cows that are on the exact same kind of land right next door to it, there's more water retention, there's more plant growth, there's better soil stability, there's better everything. And it just keeps getting better. But if we go back to this monocrop, if we go back to the idea that your dad was saying about a monocrop and canola, what we end up with is a whole place where it's like not having cows on that land. It just, instead of doing it on top of the land, or instead of doing it on top of the land like the cows do, we're monocropping, and it's causing problems below the soil, right? So remember I said that trees produce sugar, or plants produce sugar, and that sugar ends up getting into the mycorrhizal fungi, and the fungi kind of shunts it around and stuff like that. That's not the only critter that feeds on sugar. There's a whole lot of other things in the soil that depend on it's called root exudates, because it exudes from the roots. That's this sugar and like some protein and some other stuff that comes off these roots. And that's literally what the fungi is looking for. That's how it makes its initial associations in the first place. But there's also bacteria that grow around the roots. Except canola's got this really bad habit of not exuding that much. So the entire population of the soil is starved to death. And remember what I was saying about the life in the soil knitting it together? It actually stitches the soil together. Well, if you starve everything that's stitching the soil together, then a good hard rain, you're going to lose that soil, because there's nothing alive to stitch the soil together. So all these people that they say that they're environmentalists and they're saving the planet because they're getting rid of the cows. This is why I said earlier, they have no idea what they're talking about. They have absolutely no fundamental clue what ecology is, what an ecosystem is, how it functions, what it does, how to study it, how to pull it apart, how to look at it, how to even think about it, because it's just, all it is at this point is an agenda, and it's going to kill everybody if we're not careful. That's why the rancher is still one of the most important people on the planet, especially the ranchers that actually keep the cows rotating around the ranch so that they're doing what a cow needs to do. Just like planting a monocrop of canola, you strip the soil life, and bad things happen. When you strip the cows off of the top of the soil, the other but just as bad stuff happens. And it just goes on and on and on, and nobody can reach these people. They're so dead set that we're killing the planet, and that cows have no place on Earth. And I still don't understand that, considering that they co-evolved with grass. just like fungus co-evolved with algae to create plants. Cows or ruminants co-evolved with early grasses to create pastures. You take one of them away, you don't have the thing. I get really kind of steamy about that.
I do too, mate, because there's so much disinformation, so many misguided people that if you honestly believe that cow farts are causing global warming, I don't know what to tell you. It's, you know, I always think of the Homer Simpson meme where he's like backing away into the bush. That's me when I come up against one of those people. Like, oh yeah, well, we got to get rid of all the cows because of cow farts and methane and cow burps and stuff. That I'm just gently backing away into the bush because there's no point being near you right now. You are just the epitome of a normie NPC. I can't have this conversation. And even if you do, you try and change their mind and you try and reach them with some kind of logic. So you have a degree in this kind of stuff. What do you think they're teaching at the universities? Like, where is this agenda being embedded?
Well, it's not in animal science. I can tell you that. If
It's
you're
not
in
being
animal
taught.
no, it's, well, the truth is being taught in animal science, but outside of that, everybody else is getting a much different picture and a wrong picture. And considering that 95% of the people that are going to university are not in animal science, then 95% of the message that we see is not the truth. But here's the funny thing about methane and it's like they say it's cow farts, but it's really their burping. So it's coming out of the methane that's in question, and it's there. Yep, the methane is produced in the fermentation of grass, and it's just part of the chemistry. But it comes out through their mouth. And the funny thing about methane, Lauren, sugar is made out of carbon and oxygen and hydrogen, right? Do you know what methane is made out of?
No.
Carbon and hydrogen. Without oxygen, instead of a carbohydrate that sugar is, we have a hydrocarbon, which is oil, natural gas, methane, propane, butane, all the tanes, right? If we were to add a sugar to, or if we were to add an oxygen to it, essentially we're talking about a sugar molecule. It's the same thing, right? So when you look at sugar, we've been talking about sugar as a fuel source. Methane is also a fuel source, and it has nothing to do with oxygen. It's the carbon-carbon bonds. And when two carbons are bonded to each other and you figure out a way to break them apart, energy is released. That's how we get fire. That's how we drive our cars. That's how we generate a lot of electricity. Methane is 4 carbons and CH4. That's 1 carbon and 4 hydrogens. So the carbon to hydrogen bond also has that energy. So when those bonds are broken, also energy is released. Methane, the CH4, when it's produced in the ruminant's stomach, the ruminant has a tendency to burp it out. It's not really all that good for the animal. It kind of needs to get out, and it's a gas and it causes pressure, so it's going to come out. So happens that most of the time that the methane is being produced is while the cow is eating. So the cow's head is really close to the ground. This is important because methane is fairly heavy. So when the cow burps, it's burping generally, not always, but generally speaking, it's burping closer to the ground. When you've got all this grass that's stuck up out of the ground and the cow burps right here, those blades of grass kind of create a windshield. So the methane doesn't really blow around all that much. And it kind of stays there. And it just so happens there's an entire community of bacteria in the soil called methanophores. And they feed on methane. That's how they get their energy. And without methane, they don't get energy. Now they can get it not just through the cow, they can get it through the fermentation of other vegetable matter in the soil, especially in wet soils. But there's an entire population that's purpose built to take care of the methane from the cow. and it lives in the soil, which is generally speaking really close to where the cow's head is when it burps up methane. It's almost as if there's something, an intelligence in the universe that might actually know what the hell it's doing. And we keep messing with it.
So the cow feeds the soil and the grass and the fungi from both ends.
That's
Fucking crazy. We all need cows.
well,
Yeah,
maybe
yeah,
that's in the
we do.
beginning.
What we need
do.
the farmers to do, actually, what we need the farmers to do is stop planting this shit. Stop taking the government subsidies. They've been backed into a corner. Stop registering their animals, because every time you register a live birth, you've given up ownership of that animal to whoever you've registered it to, whatever, like government official, like farmers union registry, whatever, wherever it goes. So now the government now own that animal. So when they come around and say, oh yeah, sorry guys, kill all your cows because mad cow disease and stuff, or bird flu, because all the chickens, all the live births, they get registered, you give over ownership. So like to get back to real ranching, where you are in complete control and total responsibility of the health and well-being and happiness of your animals, you're going to get good soil, you're going to get good grass, you're going to get more cows, you're going to get good beef, you're going to get healthy people. It's so simple.
If you do it right, and this is the other part of that story, is that yes, we all need more cows on our land. This is true. However, you just can't, like, if let's say I got 1,000-acre ranch, which would be 500 hectares, something like that. If you're thinking in hectares, it's somewhere about, I think a hectare is like 2.2 acres, something like that. So 500 hectare ranch, and I just throw 50 cows on it. And I don't do anything. There's no fencing. I don't rotationally graze them. I just throw them out there, and I just leave them out there, and hopefully they're still alive in a year, 2 years, when I go pick them up and take them to slaughter and then replace the cows. I'm not doing my land, nor am I doing the cows any service at all. And there's a reason for that, and it's the absence of something. Can you guess what is not there that could cause the problem with cows being on the same piece of land? I'll give you a hint. It's another living animal, and it's a big one. It's not a little critter. It's an animal that you'd be able to see easily with your own eyes, and it's covered with fur. I'll give you that one.
Well, I'm gonna say human, but I don't know. Now you say it's covered with fur.
Yeah, covered with fur.
Uh,
I'll go one step. I'll give you one more. It's got teeth. Predator.
What might hunt?
Wolf.
I was gonna say, yeah, a dog or like,
dog, a wolf. Yeah.
The lack of predators is just as important to what's going on with our soils than there is with the cow. And the reason that is that if you know you're being hunted, you're going to pack together. If you're a cow and there's a whole bunch of you out there and you know you're being circled by wolves, you're going to start crowding in. So now you put a whole bunch of hooves and a whole bunch of weight in a much less in a much less area of land. So you got a lot more weight and a lot more hooves on a lot less land. And then you have a tendency to move around. So you're eating the grass. The wolves, I don't know, maybe the wolf howls and your entire herd decides, let's get a little farther away. So instead of eating the grass to the ground and ripping up the roots and destroying the grass, you don't have time. You got to move. That also makes sure that you spread the manure and the urine around. So you're not really just polluting one spot. What happens when you don't move, and we don't have the predators anymore, and a lot of the stuff in the United States is fenced in. So even if we brought wolves back, It's not going to work that way. That's why we have rotational grazing, which means if you're not relying on nature to move your cattle for you, then that means you've got to move your cattle. And you can't let them stay on the same spot. And one of the other issues is that if you do, there are things that cows like to eat, just like humans, and there are things that cows don't want to eat. Like kids sometimes don't like broccoli. Although mine love broccoli, so I need to pick out something else. But there are some kids that don't like a particular vegetable, and they'll clean their entire plate except for that pile of vegetable or whatever it is that you don't like. Cows are no different. So what ends up happening is that if you don't move your cattle, and essentially by moving your cattle, forcing them to eat everything they see, but detriment of the plants themselves, then they will only pick and choose the very thing that is the best for them. And the things that they don't like get to grow up, and those get to go to seed, which means they get to reproduce. But the thing that the cow wants does not get to reproduce. Eventually, what happens? You get a field full of crap the cow doesn't want to eat. This is not good. This is not it. This is not good. So not only does the cow's impact on the soil physically stimulate the soil, drop more nutrients and a whole bunch more life into the soil, not only is their movement critical for not overgrazing and destroying the very plant life, but also their movement basically structures the fact that they eat everything and that nothing gets a chance to actually overgrow or become more present. So your pastures just remain healthy. And we've lost all of that. The minute that we started putting, and Dana, this goes back to what you were saying with the farmer that's about to plant rapeseed across the way from you. They're trapped in the same way that the rancher in the United States is trapped with what's called a CAFO, or a confined animal feeding operation. That's where they take all the cows and put them in on great big plains of concrete and feed them corn. That is a confined animal feeding operation, and that's what we need to get away from. And we can't, because humans have this nasty habit of discovering efficiency. It's more efficient. And it is. I'm not lying when I say this. It is more efficient to take the cows to somewhere and put them there and bring the food to them instead of letting them graze their own food and then having to go collect them later. That efficiency has now determined the price of meat on the open market. So the noise, let's call it the bad habit of not allowing cows to graze, has infiltrated how much we pay for steak, and it's been that way for so long, it's caused us to expect to pay that much for a steak. So now when we tell ranchers they can't do that anymore, what we're telling them is that they're going to go bankrupt. And nobody wants to hear that they're about to go bankrupt. And the same is true for the monocropping farmer. My heart goes out to both of these people, because I have talked to a couple of people, a couple of ranchers anyway, that they don't want to do CAFO. They're stuck. The market is forcing them into this hole. And there's to them, there just doesn't seem to be any way out. And the same is true for the commodity farmer. Their seed costs a certain amount of money. Their fertilizer costs a certain amount of money. And even though that there's a way that you can get away from using any fertilizers because of the life in the soil, they don't have time. And nobody's going to risk their operation. So what I find myself having to do is to not hate the very people that I know are doing it wrong, because they will not listen to me at all. If I were to approach them and say, there's another way and you better do it, or I'm going to burn your tractor to the ground, they're pretty much not going to listen to me. But if I say that I understand your pain, is there any way that you could try it on a quarter of an acre? Just so you can see with your own eyes. Like the first time you do a Bitcoin transaction and you go, oh shit, I get it. It's the same temperament that we have to have with the very people that we we assume in a lot of ways that they know the destruction they're committing. I'm here to tell you that 80% of them really don't. They don't get it. That's not what they're looking at. I wish they were, but they're not looking at it that way. And it's kind of up to us to have like some empathy for the fact that the ones that do know what they're doing and want to stop and can't. I mean, I almost kind of tear up with those guys because they know that eventually, no matter what they do, and no matter whether they're dead or alive, or no matter if their son takes over or daughter takes over or they sell to somebody else, that farm's going away. It won't be able to be farmable, and it would have to have a complete remediation done. So I try as hard as I can to let my heart go out to those people and figure out a different way to talk to them about things like regenerative agriculture, life in the soil, how important the bugs are, how important all this stuff is. And if there was a way that they could get a quarter an acre or 1 acre to be put into a different regime, they would find out that their input cost on pesticides, herbicides, fertilizer would go down so low that they would still make more money on that acre than all the rest of their acres because their input costs are so low. They'll tell you, they'll go, yeah, but we won't make as much corn. And I'm like going, yeah, but your input costs are low. So by the time you sell your corn, and by the time you don't have to subtract what the input cost you, because you didn't have to do all this stuff because the soil took care of it for you, because you put it under a new regime and you waited 3 years, you're actually going to make the same amount of money. You don't have the diesel cost of 12 trips through your field because you've only done 2. You don't have to buy 150 pounds of nitrogen fertilizer because you're only buying 12. You don't need that much phosphorus because the mycorrhizal health of your soil, if you're not growing rapeseed, is going to mine the phosphorus that's already there for you. So you don't have to put it there. And if you do, you don't have to put anywhere close to as much. And there's a farmer and rancher named Gabe Brown, Gabe. And if you don't know who he is, I'd read his book, because this is a guy that knows more about what I'm talking about than anybody on the face of the planet. It's like, let's see, hold on. I've got his, Brown. Oh, come on. Dirt to Soil from Gabe Brown. Read that book. It's not a big book. And Gabe Brown is like, he's the farmer in the overalls. It's just a good old boy, and his writing is the same way. It's not hard. But what he was saying throughout that book is that's what happened. He's like, yeah, the amount of wheat that I produced on a per acre basis dropped precipitously. And he goes, but so did my input cost. And my input cost dropped so much more precipitously than my yield that I ended up making more money on a per acre basis. And that's, if you're not seeing the both sides of it, it's not just the yield. What did you have to do to get the yield, and how much did that cost? Those numbers work out in regenerative agriculture. But if you're just looking at the yield, the first thing that comes up is, well, how will we feed the world? And you don't have to worry about that. It sucks. It's a crappy issue to think that somebody may starve. But at one point or another, everybody's going to have a worse time because there's not going to be farmable soil. When? I don't know. But it's not looking good.
So you talking to these people and trying to explain that, you're fighting another force. On the other end of that scale is the guy that's coming around and says, hey, just give me a quarter acre and I'll input a solar farm and just a test, because this is going to produce electricity and we can kick you. I can sign a contract with you right now and it's going to give you X amount of tens of thousands of dollars, and then blah, blah, blah. Or you got the other one, the other guy that come around representing the telecommunications company is like, yeah, I just need 10 square meters to input like one of these like 5G microwave freaking towers. And in the same time, and a contract, and we'll pay you up front, and then you'll get X amount, blah, blah, blah. But then at the same time, I tweeted this today, like farmers you see it in the headlines here all the time. Where are the bugs? Nobody can figure out where the bugs are. You're like, guys, really? The
Mhm.
fucking monocrops, the 5G towers, the fucking
Mhm.
sea of solar panels, and you're all wondering where the bugs are, and the
Yeah.
spray. Like,
Chemical.
what
Yeah, I
are
was
you
about to say,
thinking?
don't forget the chemistry that's like polluting everything. I mean,
Right.
it all goes together. And for like the people that are like, oh, it's just 5G that drives the bees away, it's all of it. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's the complete package. And
There
once
was
those
so just one, because we saw this just the other day in the newspaper. It was talking about the swifts, right?
Yeah, the swifts, they used to be a huge
Yeah,
population,
like
and
down
that's all
60% over
gone.
10 years. They're like, yeah, no fucking shit. Like, if you keep pumping all of this 5G radio wave, microwave technology into the ionosphere, and like, no wonder they're getting lost on the way.
Also, when we were going on a walk, there was just like a line of beehives.
Mhm.
Right next to it was a 5G tower.
Right under
And
the 5G.
smell bees, and I was like, "What bees?" And Daddy was like, "Well, there's a 5G tower there." I was like, oh,
Oh, speaking of bees, turns out bees actually will land on mushroom like a there's other mushrooms other than mycorrhizal clearly, but they all have this tendency to exude things other than they make other things other than organic acids, and a lot of these chemistries are actually medicinal for bees. So
Hmm.
you'll find bees like hovering around like different kinds of mushrooms, and they're not eating the mushroom themselves, but the mushroom will also exude certain chemistries that fight bee mite.
Wow.
So when we don't have a whole, like when we have swaths of canola, now I don't know if the particular species of mycorrhizal fungi that's in those soils that would not actually be there would provide said medicine. So this is conjecture on my part. But when you have, 1,000 acres of like no pharmacy for the bees to be able to pick up a possible remedy for bee mites, then we start wondering about why bee mites. Now, there's another guy. If you want to learn a lot of good information about mushrooms and fungus in general, um, Paul Stamets. Have you heard his name?
I have, and I've been
Okay.
wowed by his knowledge. I've listened to him on a few podcasts before, and just crazy. I remember coming across him on the Tim Ferriss podcast, and he was talking about how he figured out there was a specific fungus that drove off are they carpenter ants? The real problem ants that eat through the wood
Yeah,
and
yeah. You're talking about cordyceps, and it doesn't drive them off as much as it infects ants and turns them into zombies.
whoa. I think
So
I actually
it's
saw this somewhere.
yeah, there it's in essence it's the positioning behind the story in The Last of Us. Did y'all watch that?
Mhm, mhm.
If you get a chance to watch The Last of Us, it's pretty good. It was part of a video game, or it's the TV show came out of a video game, but the storyline of the video game is the same: is that a fungus that generally infects insects and turns them into zombies for their own ends mutated and jumped over to humans, and essentially it takes over the nervous system in a way of the ant. It causes them to crawl up like a stick or something like that, and then it freezes them in place, and then it grows a fruiting body out of their head, and it sprinkles spores down on the other ants. So the ants have become very, very attuned to this particular odor, and they don't like the odor of this fungus, of this cordyceps. So that's what Paul was doing, is he was making this cordyceps. He was growing up this cordyceps and causing it and getting it to where it had no odor, so that it tricked the ants, and he could put it into ant bait. And then the ants would actually ingest this stuff and take it down, and it would kill whole colonies of termites and carpenter ants and all kinds of neat stuff. And he's got a patent on it, but he still has yet to actually make a product. And I keep waiting for it, but it hasn't come out yet. But getting back to, I was going to ask you the question when you said swifts. Are those birds?
Yeah, like the
Yeah.
swallows, you might call them.
Here's one of the other reasons why
Yes.
there's no birds. There's no trees.
Mhm.
Yeah.
When you think about it, if you think about what's happened to farmland, and what country are y'all in right now? Y'all used to live in France. Where y'all now?
Yeah, southeast UK right now.
Okay, so you're back in the UK. Okay, so even in the UK though,
Mhm.
y'all's farmers have it better. Um, it is broken up by greenery, but out in the United States, especially in the Midwest,
Mhm.
where we really went fence row to fence row,
Yeah.
a whole bunch of trees had to be taken out to be able to do fence row to fence row. Nobody really remembers what it looked like before that, but
Yeah.
we've deforested almost all of the central United States because of agriculture.
Mhm.
If you don't, and I'm not talking just trees, bushes, shrubs that all had to go. There's no nesting sites.
Yeah,
And if you
that's
don't have
crazy.
nesting sites, you don't have birds. It may not even be that 5G somehow or another screwed up their homing mechanisms. They don't have a place to live. So they're going to go find someplace else to live. They need a tree. Or even if they're a ground dwelling bird, they need some kind of cover. And that cover isn't present in anywhere in Kansas or Nebraska, whatever, right? So one of the food sources of a bird is bugs. So you get rid of all the trees, you make sure the birds can't nest, the birds stop eating the bugs, and then you wander out to your field and go, I need pesticide, I got bugs. And the look of stupidity should wash over the face, but it never does. Because we're not thinking that far out. It's like that's one of the reasons why I love Bitcoiners is that at this point I can talk to any Bitcoiner and they can look 100 years in the past to 100 years in the future without blinking an eye. Instead of saying, oh, well, that never affects me, they have no problem looking at the future and they have no problem looking at what could have happened in the past. And when I look at the past and I realize that 150 years ago, the Midwest was essentially an oak savanna with a whole bunch of oak trees. It's not exactly a forest, but it was pastured and it was broken up by these acorn trees. And you don't have that anymore. So then you wonder why you have insects because there's no birds. Well, why don't we have any birds? Because you cut down all the trees. It's a logical progression, and we just refuse to see it. It's childlike. It's it's I it's so easy to see once you see it. And now we've worked ourselves into such a pickle that yeah, it's easy to see it. And under these market conditions, the same market conditions in agriculture that have existed for the last 40 years, it's impossible to get out of it. You're not going to spend the money to strip acres away from your acreage to plant trees. You're not going to do it. So the problem's not going to be fixed. The issue ends up becoming that you're still going to have pests. Now, soil health actually helps with pests because if you've got a weak plant, it puts off chemical markers that get into the air that guide the very pest that kills that plant directly to the plant. The plant's actually committing suicide by saying, please come kill me. I'm sick. It's almost as if the plant itself saying, I cannot be allowed to survive. I have to die. So once that occurs, you start seeing how all of this is like really intimately connected. Everything is married. They're not just having a relationship with each other. They're not just dating each other. They're not just friends. They are married at the hip and have kids with each other. The cow is married to the soil. The fungus is married to algae, and their baby is forests. Without each other, the other part of the system fails, and therefore the entire system just crumbles out from under you. We have no idea what we're doing. We keep screwing with stuff. We don't do it well. We don't actually, by the time that we see that there's a problem, it's 50 years out, and we have no capacity because of our short-term thinking to look in the past to say what could have happened. And it just gets worse and worse and worse. And I mean, I am eternally optimistic. I'm actually really hopeful because of the amount of young farmers that are looking at regenerative agriculture, and they're the ones that are actually on the farm with their mom and dad right now saying, give me an acre and I will show you what I will do with the 1 acre out of your 1,500. And when the farmers actually see what can be done if it's done correctly, all of a sudden, like Gabe Brown, you start turning over more and more acreage to things like cover crops, putting animals out there, making sure that the soil is always covered with a living plant, making sure there's always living roots in the soil, figuring out ways to grow your commodity crop and plant them inside of living grass and not have to act like they're a weed. Gabe Brown's book is amazing. If you want to get to the heart of the matter as fast as possible, read Dirt to Soil. That one will blow your mind. And then everything else falls out of that one.
Like you, Dave, I am hopeful. So I just want to back to your trees thing. I just want to help Lauren understand, like, so all the farms you see around here, what's around them? What's around the fields?
What do you mean, like fences?
Fences, but what the fence is made of, not just the wire fences. It's the hedges, right?
Oh yes.
Everywhere you go.
That's true.
Hedgerow.
Yes.
Everywhere. There's a reason for that. That's where the birds nest.
Mm.
Because the farmers know, they might not know now, but they knew back in the day, these hedgerows are hundreds of years old. And this is what Britain is very well known for. Like, you fly over, like this patchwork of farms all over the place. Like we're talking like, you know, maybe a field would be 10 acres, but it would have the hedgerow all around it.
Farm I've seen has had hedgerow.
Look out of the window of the plane next time we fly. You'll just see hedgerow, like every field is a patchwork. Whereas in the US, you are talking thousands of acres of just nothing but one crop.
Just unbroken.
Completely unbroken. It's like a sea. So no bird can fly across that and find respite, and there's no food for it either. You know, it's a desert. It's a desert for the insects as well. Most people would think, oh well, you know, a great big field of rapeseed is bright yellow, and that's got to be great for the bees. That's exactly what David was saying. It ain't.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that you mentioned hedgerows, because another book that I've actually bought and read is Hedges and Hedge Laying by, who's the author? Murray MacLeod. You know, he's like out there in the UK. It's like it's an entire book on how it's like the history of English countryside hedgerows, why they're there, what they do, and how to rejuvenate them, which is where you get like these hedgerow competitions where people go into like an old hedgerow and they like look like they tear half of it out and they lay them over and make it look like a fence, and it's like gorgeous. I'm in love with hedgerows for the very reason that when they flower, they provide food for bees. So you get your pollinators in the spring along with everything else. They provide cover for ground dwelling birds and nesting birds. But one of the other things they also provide is covered transport by all these critters to be able to go and have cover everywhere they go. So they're able to spread their genetics out by meeting, you know, I don't know, other little pretty girl birds or whatever, but they're not an island. They're like highways. And they go all over the countryside, and they're all being used by snakes and voles and mice and birds and you name it.
Hedgehogs. Where does a hedgehog live? Right?
Yeah.
In a hedge.
Yeah, and all these critters are critical. They're all critical. I mean, from the tiniest little, you know, bacteria in the soil all the way up to the cow. They all, like I said, it's like this huge love fest. They're all married, and they're all married to each other. You know, they don't just have these passing relationships with each other. They're absolutely fundamentally dependent on each other. We keep screwing it up.
So you noticed it was about a month ago, the farmer came around with a great big machine and he whacked the bushes and he cut it all. Yeah. Well, he would only do that like right at the depth of winter, where there would be no birds nesting and there would be no insects in there. So it's ready for spring. And so the bush is going to feel spring, and it's going to feel the attack of like being cut back so aggressively. So it feels as though it needs to propagate. Like David was saying earlier, everything is there to propagate. So it's just, you see in about 4 weeks time, that bush outside, that hedgerow right over our fence, that's just going to start exploding. And that attracts the bees, and that attracts the other pollinators, which attracts the birds, which should help the crop. I just know that crop is just going to be a crop full of shit. Anyway, last thing, Dave.
Yeah.
Have you gone down the rabbit hole of electroculture?
No, I have not.
All right, brother. I'm going to leave you on that. There's a book.
Okay.
There's a book by Justin Christoflo. Let me find. So I've got the free one here on the archive.org. This one is going to blow your mind. And
okay.
we've been practicing electroculture here, just in the home with our house plants. And the quick overview is the TLDR for the listeners. I just put it in your Zoom chat there. The TLDR is there is all of this beautiful energy around us the whole time in the ether, and the ether was studied heavily back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, primarily by Wilhelm Reich and a few others, and Christopher Flow, obviously. And he was onto this even earlier, and how you can use copper to draw this energy in from the ether into the soil to regenerate the soil and just give it a good old kickstart. And the results that they had. So in that book, there were accounts of farmers that were moving across to Australia back in the day, if I remember correctly.
Right.
Just sending him letters by the real snail mail of the incredible results that they were seeing in yield from using his technique. And the technique was at the north end, but the north end of the field, you would put in a pole as high as you could, and you would wrap copper wire all around the pole into the ground. Then you would run that all the way to the other end of the field, underground, cover it all back up again. But that would energize thousands of acres, or thousands of square meters, excuse me, of the ground, which would explode the yield in the plants, explode the quality of the soil. So I'm looking forward to you getting your hands on that book, getting into it, seeing what you think, and then reporting back.
Yeah, absolutely. Because a lot of that really makes sense. Excuse me, really makes sense. Because if you boil chemistry down, it's just electricity.
Mm-hmm.
Like for instance, almost all of the macro and micronutrients that a plant needs to live is positively charged. Calcium has a positive charge on it as an ion. Ammonia, or the nitrogen fertilizer, has a positive charge. And the soil, that's one of the things that we did not get into at all today, because there's only so much time. But the soil, and especially when I talk a lot about biochar and putting raw charcoal into the ground for various reasons. Once I started really looking at water, because water is highly electrical, I started looking at carbon and how it interacts with water and other positively charged ions. It becomes very clear very quickly how electrical all this is. It does not surprise me one bit that this guy's like, yeah, this is all electrical. Maybe we should give it an energy source, or at least provide a way for electrons to move through the soil. This does not surprise me. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to read it. Yeah. Damn well sure that I am, but it's not surprising that somebody had come up with the notion of electricity and the way plants grow and the way soil acts, because it's when I talk about biochar, I talk about it always as a battery, because it literally soaks up like calcium, which is calcium has a +2 charge on it, right? Calcium is critical for all living things. especially in plants. But when it gets around carbon, when it gets around this biochar, it gets sticky and it sticks to the carbon. So it doesn't, and it's like, and carbon or calcium and a lot of these other ions are, they're kind of like they can get washed out. So you want them to stick to something so that they'll always be there. But in order for a plant to get one, like let's say that a plant root and its associated mycorrhizal fungi come along and they're seeing that calcium and it's stuck to that piece of charcoal, and they go, I want that calcium because I want to be able to get it to my plant buddy because he's going to give me a couple bucks worth of sugar out of it. So that fungus looks at it and says, I need to get you. And the carbon's like, you don't get to get this unless you give me something. And so what it gives it is 2 hydrogen ions, which takes the place of the calcium 2 charge, because it's like each hydrogen ion has a +1 charge. So it gives 2 hydrogen ions that it from its metabolism, it just basically says, here's 2 hydrogen ions. That actually kicks off the calcium, because the calcium has 2 positively, has another also a 2+ charge. So the charges equal out. The carbon's getting back what it's given. So now the fungus can get the calcium and do whatever it's going to do. But it's an electrical exchange. It's like, think of that scene in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom or whatever, where he's like putting the statue, he's taking the gold statue and he's putting the sandbag. It's the exact same thing, only it's electrical. Again, this makes sense. And I haven't even read this book yet.
Okay, I love it. And for all of the IMDb nerds out there, it was Raiders of the Lost Ark. We don't want these messages coming in on Fountain. If you got the film wrong.
Oh yeah, I got it wrong. Oh, it's gonna happen anyways. I go, how could he get that wrong? I can see it now. Oh well.
So to finish this one off, if anybody wants to have a go at electroculture, go out, find an old lead and a plug that you're not using, strip it back, get the copper wire out of it, then go and cut a branch of a twig and find just something outside, which is natural, cut it off a bush or whatever, wrap it around that thing so it's a spiral, have a little bit dangling at the top, try and flare it out a little bit, and then just stick it in that pot plant that's been sick for the last 6 months and you can't figure out what the hell to do with it, and see if it makes a difference. And I'd love to hear anybody's feedback on that. So
yeah, I can't wait to rip into this, Daniel. Thank you for bringing this to me. I have never even heard of this before.
And I would like if you're in touch with ranchers or farmers and you can borrow a 1/4 acre, I'd love, for somebody to do a real field test on this and just say, right, let's take a 1/4 acre, plant your corn in here too, and let's just count the yield per yard against like whatever else, and let's just see what's happening, because
just see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, imagine that. Imagine replacing all of that fertilizer and bullshit with just a bit of like cheap copper wiring and piping, and it's incredible. But I do have hope, and I have a lot of hope that young Bitcoiners like Lauren that are getting interested in this stuff. I foresee that there's going to be a lot of land sales coming up in the next 5 to 10 years, where farmers are just going to get shaken out, and heart goes out to them. They're under attack here in the UK with the new inheritance tax.
Clear.
Like they've got an inheritance tax now and people are just going to get wrecked financially, and their land is already wrecked. But if Bitcoiners can buy that land and keep the family generations around and bring in these new practices, the regenerative idea, it's not new. What am I talking about?
No,
regenerative
it's not new.
Farming, electroculture, and get back to basics and get a loyal title over that land and over the animals, then I see a very, very bright future. And I just hope we get there sooner rather than later. But Dave, final question.
Me too.
If you had one last orange pill left to give to somebody, who would you give it to and why?
Oh man, I should have been expecting this. I can only think of my dad, who he's deceased. He died in 2005, but see, he died 4 years before the first transaction was done. And I would like to just give him the orange pill just to see what he'd think. because he was like, Marine Corps, pretty conservative, but not so conservative enough that he didn't think that all drugs should be legalized because it's causing problems. He knew he knew about the cartels. He understood it's like you're just creating the mafia all over again. So, and this isn't helpful. So he had some pretty wild ideas, but he was pretty much, dyed in the wool businessman, entrepreneur. He drilled oil wells, so he was not at all about this carbon's going to kill us all thing. And I would just like to see his reaction as to what do you think about this? If even if he didn't like it, I would like to know that. If he did love it, I'd like to know that. But that's the guy that I would have given the orange pill to.
Love it, man. Great answer. And I'm going to bring you back. Let's get the feedback from this one, because I think there's going to be a lot of questions coming in. But I'm going to bring you back to go through your Forrest Walker article, because that was a great one. And
did you get to read it?
I love it, man. I love it.
Oh, yeah. Good.
And we did. I mean, we're already 2 hours in, and that one's an hour and a half on all by itself.
My God, I didn't realize we had been here this long.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
That's what happens in Bitcoin land, huh, Lauren? Lauren stuck around for the whole biology lesson. Look at that. How many podcasts have you ever stuck around for the entirety? Really?
Yeah.
Well, you go, Dave.
But
it's the first.
Yeah, I'm not sure. But actually, I feel like this is a sign, because we just went to go check out the
junior college,
for biology and stuff. I'm like, I'm not really into gardening. I don't really know if I want to do it, all that stuff.
Things happen.
Well,
all right, Lauren, there are no coincidences in life. All right, here's another philosophical lesson. So, David, yeah, what just happened is this afternoon there's a junior college here where we live, which does kind of vocational courses. Good. So that's alongside what you'd be doing, your English, math, biology, the vocational side is they've got the greenhouses, they get the kids in there, and they plant out seeds, and they learn about the soil, I would hope, but I don't think they're going to get. Here's the thing. You just probably got in this last 2 hours like that, way more advanced, but it's a good idea. I loved it. It's just nice to know that kids are getting outside, a couple of hours a day to get their hands in the mud, and that they plant vegetable gardens, and they've got animals that they tend to.
You're more excited than me.
I couldn't have imagined doing anything more like perfect for me between the age of 14 and 16. Like, instead of being stuck in the classroom all day long.
Lauren, here's the thing about biology that I think a lot of people don't appreciate, is that if you'll look at how biology works, then it's already figured out almost every engineering problem for you. So if you have like a mathematics bent, or you like building stuff, or you like working on problems, and you see yourself as an engineer, bioengineering is a thing. It's a huge thing. And but it like people go, oh, bioengineering, that's so highfalutin. I just want to take it to where it's a real easy example of how to use biology to build something. There's a company, and I can't remember the name of it, but they grow furniture with mushrooms. And what they do is they get sawdust, which is the food source, the carbon source, clearly the sugar source, and they essentially pack it into molds, right? And then after it's packed into molds, they seed it with bacteria. They seed it with a particular kind of fungus. The fungus grows through the food medium, and thereby fills almost every space in the mold with its own tissue. The mushroom tissue has now replaced all of the sawdust. Then they unmold it, and they stick it into a giant microwave oven to essentially kill, I know it's sad, but kill all the cells of the fungus. But it's not like the fungus disassociates. It's made out of some very strong stuff called chitin. I won't get into it. Mm-hmm. But that's how they build chairs.
That's crazy.
They bake chairs, and they make packing material, and they make all kinds of stuff, and it's all made out of fungus, and it's hard as a rock. And like they make these chairs that are perfectly fine chairs, except they're all made out of fungus. It's an engineering problem. They figured out a way to take a waste stream from a sawmill and turn it into furniture that they can sell. And they use biology as the intermediary. And all it took was to understand how this one biological process worked. And what they're selling has almost nothing to do with biology itself. They're selling a chair. That's an issue of bioengineering.
And
It's
I just
just
happen to know a Bitcoiner with a sawmill with a shed ton of sawdust that he needs to find. So let me get this right. You're telling me he could actually sell his chairs for sats?
You could. I mean, it's like, yeah, it's not simple to be able to, because you're working with wood as a growth medium, which means you need sterile, which means autoclaves. It's not something you just go do. It's something that can be done, but if you have the background, the microbiology background to understand how things work, how things are clean, how things can get infected, and how to guard against that, then yeah, if you've got the gumption, you can go do that. Or in my case, like if I knew the person that you're talking about that's got a whole shitload of wood, I would be converting it into biochar, and in that conversion process, pulling the gas that comes off of it and charging an electrical generator with that gas, and then running Bitcoin miners and harvesting all of the heat from the electrical generator, the gasoline motor that's running on the gas produced by the process, and all the heat from all the Bitcoin miners to actually dry out the stock that goes in to feed the process in the first place. Thereby you're trying to keep a hold of all the energy and making sure that you don't lose any of the energy. And we would be putting the biochar into the soil, where it would do things like hold 7 times its weight in water, where it provides shelter for all the critters in the soil that we were just talking about. It is a battery for all of the micronutrients that a plant needs. And we talked about how it has to actively be stripped off. See how all this actually works.
That's coming in part 2, listeners. No more spoilers, Dave. No more spoilers. We're going to talk about your forest walkers. But just to we're going to end up on this. This is a little project that we're going to have going. Yeah. Our blue-gray mushroom grow kit, our blue-gray oyster mushroom grow kit. So I've got to send off for the spores, and then we're going to get it going. Looking forward to that. That's going to be fun. We won't make chairs. We will eat them, and they're going to be delicious. But
when you're done with that kit, and it's like at one point or another, it will peter out and stop producing mushrooms, rip open the bag that all the medium is in and let it dry out, and see if you can break it in half after that. It'll take a few days to dry it out. Just let it dry out in the sun or something like that, and see how hard it can become.
All right. So what do we say, Lauren? Thanks, Dave.
Thank you so much for this biology lesson.
And I'll be
oh, you're welcome. Thank you for inviting me back. And I've been looking forward to this for like 3 weeks now.
We'll set another one up. I'll be in your DMs or on Signal, and we'll get part 2 and do it justice again. But thanks for coming on, brother.
Yeah, sure thing, Daniel. Bye, Lauren.
Bye.
Well, thank you so much, Dave, for doing that. And the work that you do in the Bitcoin space is so important. And yes, we do need to set up the Forest Walkers one. If you've not read that, I will link this in the show notes so you guys have that ready to go. It's a real mix of, if you like sci-fi, then you're gonna love it anyway, but it's a real mix of what Dave's saying is like, this is so possible. Like these Forest Walker things, like AI kind of Boston Dynamics robots, like trawling through forests, and no spoilers. I've already done it. No more spoilers. I'll set it up. I'll set it up so you can push me on the socials, push me on Nostr and Twitter so that we can get this one done as well. But please go and follow Dave. Like I said at the beginning, He's doing excellent work with Bitcoin, and it's so important that we support each other, whether that is by sending sats across Fountain app or just sharing the shows and liking and subscribing is the minimum that we can do to help each other out here, because if not you, then who? We're not gonna get to another 100,000 Bitcoiners if we are not pushing this education forward and trying to explain to people why it's so important that they need to start saving in a money, in a medium of exchange, in a store of value that is so far better than anything our species has ever encountered. And if you've not read it yet, Croesus Jesse Myers has updated his Bitcoin once in a species essay, and it's a really deep dive into anthropology and neuroscience, and of course money and Bitcoin. It's a brilliant read, and I'm gonna get Jesse on the show to go through it. So if you haven't read it, you can also go and listen to Guy Swan read it for you on his Bitcoin podcast, Bitcoin Audible, and support him via Fountain. Like I said before, join Orange Pill app. Go and meet your local people if you can find them. If you join the app, you'll be able to find who the Bitcoiners are in the area. You'll be able to find what events are going on. There might be a local meetup. And you'll be able to find what conferences you can go and attend. This year, you can come and find us. Bitcoin Ireland this one is shaping up, I'm telling you guys, in Dublin. If you can get cheap flights to and from Dublin towards the end of May, 23rd of May, hit the link in the show notes, use the code Bitten, get 10% discount. There are some, there's some already great names going there, and more being spoken behind the scenes. So well done to Lawrence and the team for putting this one on. Get over to Bitcoin Island. Come and join us for a pint of Guinness. Use that code Bitten. If you can't make that one, in Europe we have so many great options. You've got June, BTC Prague. Sailor is returning for a third year. Safedine is returning for a second year. Parker Lewis is coming back for his second year. Tour de Meester, I think, is on the ticket again. These names are huge. Jimmy Song's been a couple of times. It'd be great to see him back on the stage as well. Giacomo's always around. Get over to the link in the show notes for BTC Prague. Use that code Bitten, get 10% discount. Get all 3 days. If you come in, maximize it. The first day is going to be Bitcoin for corporations, and they've got some really interesting speakers on that front. I'm hoping to see Sam Roberts there. Sam has been on the show. He was the guy that what's the word I'm looking for? Advised, consulted. I can't remember the word. Tripping up myself here. I've just landed back in the UK. Sorry, I'm a bit jaded. He advised the UK pension to invest 3% of their AUM into Bitcoin. That was the first big move in the UK. He's going to be there, as is Joe Bryan, as is Sailor, as are many others as well. So, BTC Prague, don't miss it. If you can't make that one, you have Riga, you have the Baltic Honey Badger, and that's in August, over the 8th, and the week after that you have BTC Hell. That's BTC Helsinki. If you've never been to Finland, this could be your year. Again, the code Bitten gets you a 10% discount on all of these conferences. I'm trying to support these guys as much and as best that I can, and I'd love to see you all there and shake your hands and say hi. Don't forget, stack your sats, relay across Europe, Swan in the US, please self-custody with Bitbox. Go and check out paidwithflash.com. And if you want a copy of my book, wow, it's the last thing I'm shilling here, completely out of music. My book is called Choose Life. I wrote it as I was falling down the rabbit hole of exiting my fiat job, taking my wife and my 4 kids around the world. We took them out of school, we homeschooled, we world schooled, we unschooled. All the stories are in there of how we did it and how you could, possibly do it yourselves. It's not a self-help book. It's not a how-to book. It's just like all the good times and bad times are in that book. Don't worry. And it'd be great if you wanted to grab a copy. Get over to Consensus Network. So it's bitcoinbook.shop/Bitten and use the code Bitten at checkout. It's another Bitcoin business that you can go and support instead of buying through Amazon. And I'd appreciate it. Yep, look forward to it. I'll be signing those books at these conferences. So hope to see you there. Thank you for listening, guys. Take care. I'll catch you on the next one.